What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that is Justin Boone. Boone, what's going on, buddy? Happy Halloween to you and to those listening tomorrow. And I love you're in theme here, pal. What's going on?
I have many themes going on right now, Harmon. I'm in theme with the Halloween, and I'm also in theme with the Jays being one win away from the World Series, man. So we got a lot of things. We got a little Go Jays Go button. We got the hat rocking, and didn't want to go with like the blue and the orange contrast. So luckily I had a black Blue Jays hat that I could put on with this. But yeah, a lot of things to be excited about right now, man.
You know, I spent almost about like 8-9 years of my life in LA. I don't really care about baseball. I'm certainly not a Dodgers fan, but I got a lot of friends that are, folks I love dearly that are Dodgers fans. But they've had enough. They've had enough fun, right? I feel like I should be pulling for, not just because of our relationship and our friendship here on the show, but I mean, I think you guys deserve one. So. I'm in my skeleton sweatshirt, which really makes sense here for, somebody who's dead inside to the World Series, obviously. I think that checks out. But whatever's left of my cold, dark heart, I think can root for your Blue Jays. Not that I'm going to watch a second of it, but I can root for your Blue Jays, for your happiness, buddy.
I'm just happy that you're aware that the World Series is going on, because I feel like whenever we bring up sports that aren't football, there's like an element of, is Harmon even going to know about this, or is Harmon just been buried in the film all week? So I'm glad that you've been paying attention enough to know that the Jays are potentially going to pull off a miraculous win over the Dodgers, but there's a long way to go. We still got one more game. It's the best team in baseball they're going against. So don't want to celebrate yet, but very, very excited that they've gotten this close.
I'm aware of it because I still have my LA Times notifications on my phone, and they sent out a very, very upset notification that I woke up to this morning.
Imagine.
So, all right, that is how I was aware of it. All right, with that, let's get into the business at hand today. Yeah, there's a World Series going on, but there's Week 9 in the NFL. There's your fantasy football teams for us to get you prepared for. So that's what we're going to do here today, as we always do on the show. For those who are unfamiliar, this is the structure of our preview shows. First two segments, these are Boone's 6-pack of questions for each week's slate of games. Segment number 3 is literally no one's games of the week. They're, some of the dumbest, worst games on the slate, but I want to talk about them because you guys got to care about them for you got to care about these lovable little freak shows for your fantasy teams. Segment 4, rapid fire, the hurry up offense. You know what it is. All right, let's get into it. Let's waste no more time. Let's dive into Boone's 6-pack of questions. All right, Boone, let's get into it. What is your first pack of questions here?
Well, we're going to go a little bit along the Halloween theme here. Which fantasy stars scare you the most in Week 9? And if you want to throw some out too, you can. I have one at each position that I want to go through. And the first one, it's a big one, and it's going to seem insane, but Bijan Robinson going against the Patriots in New England. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're supposed to bench him. That's not what we're doing here. That's not what this is all about. There's almost no scenario where you're ever going to do that. But since we're framing this as who scares you the most, I mean, how could you not be scared about Robinson right now? He's a running back that was in an absolute smash spot last week going against the Dolphins. He comes away from that game with 9 carries for 26 yards, 3 catches for 23 yards, ends up with a fumble in that game as well. Now he has to go against one of the hardest opponents, the Patriots. They have been great. I mean, they haven't allowed any running back to reach 50 rushing yards against them this year. They're allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to the position. And I don't really know exactly what's going on with this Falcons offense. I mean, some of it is definitely that Kirk Cousins was out there under center last week, and I don't think Kirk Cousins is the player that he once was. And I think the Dolphins were able to kind of attack the rushing game because of it. We also have the Falcons, losing Caleb McGarry, their right tackle. That's not great. That's not going to help things. So you hope that this week Michael Penix Jr. is going to be back. You hope that Drake London's going to be back. That'll give the offense some teeth back. But this offense, and really the Falcons team entirely this season, they have been very, very up and down. And it seems crazy that you'd ever be worried about a superstar like Bijan Robinson, but I don't know how you couldn't be just a little bit concerned about him coming off of the game that he just had, in the matchup that he had, and going against this opponent.
Totally fair. have been kind of saying, and I don't know how much this is like tongue in cheek or if I really believe this, that because he was in this smash spot last week and he underperformed and now he's going to this tough matchup, you just know like this is the game he's actually going to smash, because that's just how weird and random this stuff is. But from a serious standpoint, after going back and rewatching that game that Atlanta played last week, when you're watching it live, you're just, oh my God, what is Kirk Cousins doing? He's washed. He's terrible. I really thought there were just not a lot of open throws for Kirk to take there, because the Falcons offense without Drake London on the field is just, it's so neutered. I mean, Darnell Mooney's not had a good season this year. He's had a very weird season. There's been kind of comments from the coaching staff. I don't think he played well in that game at all. And then, the Dolphins defense is just like, okay, if we know they've been getting run all over, they definitely know they've been getting run all over. So they brought a bunch of bodies into the box and said, Bijan Robinson is not beating us. Kirk Cousins and David Sills, you guys are going to have to beat us. And guess what? They didn't do it. So I do think having Drake London back and Penix, who just certainly can, whether he does it accurately or not, that's another question, but can open up more areas of the field. I wouldn't say I'm scared about Bijan, and I do have some Bijan Robinson teams, and obviously I'm not starting him, but I'm hoping for better this week. I think I can tell myself a story about how it gets a little bit better this week.
Yeah. And again, like I said at the top, and like you reiterated, by no means are you benching him. By no means are you even considering benching him. But if it were to be another kind of down game for him, I wouldn't be that surprised. I guess that's sort of what I'm saying here. So just a little bit worried about his outlook. It's just not going to be the same kind of projection this week as it normally would be, but he's still right up there near the top. I'm not ranking him as a low-end RB1. I'm just saying, seems like there's a possibility that we could have another down game. Second guy on the list that I want to talk about here, Chris Olave at the Rams. And this one might seem funny because I feel like I've been touting Olave as somebody that people should be going out and try to acquire him, consistently among the league leaders, the most targeted players. He's fourth in that category right now on a per game basis. But we have to adapt when there's new variables out here. And the new variable this week is going to be Tyler Shuck being named the starter. And, I don't think that he has done enough to kind of warrant getting an opportunity to go out there. I don't think what we saw from him in the preseason, I don't think in the limited opportunities he's gotten here really make me that excited about him taking over the offense. I think it's just a little bit by default that they want to get a look at him, that Spencer Rattler's been turning the ball over. So maybe Shuck isn't going to turn the ball over as much, but I don't think this is one of those situations where I'm hopeful that it's going to be some, shot in the arm for the offense. Like when we saw a rookie like Jackson Dart get out there and all of a sudden the Giants are like this whole new team around him. I don't think that's going to be the situation here, right? Plus, to make matters worse, Olave about to enter the hardest part of his schedule, just very, very tough stretch here. 4 of his next 6 games are coming against defenses in the bottom 6 for fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. And this date with the Rams, fairly underrated. He's also got a bye in week 11 coming up. So I wrote him up this week as a guy that I actually think people should be selling at the moment because I'm a little bit worried about the Tyler Shuck version of this offense. I know there's the rumors that Rashid Shaheed could get traded, but Olave's already getting a ton of volume, and he had plenty of games where he wasn't putting up big stats with it. It's just kind of the nature of this offense at the moment. And the Rams defense on paper just looks like a middle of the pack matchup, right? But they've only let 3 wide receivers top 60 yards against them, this year. And the last one to do it was in week 5. So I would be very wary of Olave in this matchup. And I am a little worried about him moving forward. And I think if there's someone out there that saw the recent success, he's had 3 straight games of double-digit fantasy points. If there's somebody out there that's interested in him and you can get top 24 wide receiver, top 24 running back value for him, I would be trying to do that before this game.
Yeah, I dug into this today for a piece I wrote for the site, and Rattler's tough, and because he's like 15th in success rate this season among guys with 100 plus pass attempts. So like he's been good. He's been in the same range as CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts, and nobody's talking about benching those guys. But the problem is that he's from like a passing, like net yards per pass attempt, he's comfortably in the bottom 10 among quarterbacks. And I think the reason he's from a success rate standpoint is so high is because he's like helped keep the offense moving. Like he's been a good scrambler. He hasn't taken, even though he's thrown a lot of, he started to throw a lot of interceptions lately and the turnovers and stuff. He hasn't taken a lot of sacks. So again, he just kept this offense that runs a lot of plays, is second in no huddle rate. He's kept them moving. I don't know if Tyler Shuck is going to be that guy, right? That's the thing. I think there's actually a chance. And again, we just don't know. I'm not smart enough to know what Tyler Shuck is going to do when he gets on the field. He's, like you said, there's not been anything encouraging that you can sit here and be like, well, we look at that game in the preseason or whatever. There's not been any of that. But we don't really know what he's going to be. Quarterbacks are just tough. There is a chance that he's better throwing over the middle of the field, which I think Rattler kind of struggled with. He was better working these outbreaking routes with Olave. So that's kind of the thing I'm watching the most this week to know, like, all right, this connection is either going to be good for Olave or it's not, because I think some of that was the meat left on the bone with the Rattler connection. But there is certainly a chance that you're right, that this is the time to get out on Olave, because Tyler Shuck might come in here and conceivably make things worse with an offensive line that's struggling to protect in the interior after Eric McCoy went down, and they can't run the ball either. And obviously the secondary is one thing with the Rams, but we know that front is gonna make life tough on quarterbacks.
Yeah, big time. And that's part of it too, like just kind of getting off of the Saints offense in general, like, Alvin Kamara being dinged up and not really looking like the same player this season. Like, you just really want to be a part of this Saints offense if you're making a push to the fantasy playoffs, if you're making a push for a fantasy championship. I don't know that I do. So the fact that he's had some success lately, I think you might be able to trade him right now and just kind of avoid any potential that this thing absolutely tanks with Tyler Shuck out there. Two more guys that I want to talk about, though. I want to keep moving here. Bo Nix versus the Texans, and it's been kind of like a bumpy ride for him in his sophomore season. Is that the nicest way to say it? Maybe, but he started to heat up a little bit lately. I just want to caution everyone that his big games this year, we've really been able to project them because they've gone against the Bengals, the Giants, and the Cowboys. Those are teams that are all top 7 in terms of easiest matchups for fantasy quarterbacks. So he's taking advantage when the opportunity arises against a fairly easy defense. Now he's got to go against the Texans, and they are statistically the worst defense to face for fantasy quarterbacks. So you're looking at them as a team that's held, for the last 5 QBs that they've faced under 10 points. That is terrible. That is, weak losing, not weak winning. That is weak losing kind of stuff there. So that is very brutal. I don't want to go anywhere near Nix this week, so I don't think this is the week to play him. Definitely scared, and I think people who might see some of those recent stats might get excited because they drafted him as, a top 8, top 9 fantasy quarterback this summer, and now they think, okay, it's finally happening. But in this matchup, I think we're going to see him have another down game.
Yeah, we saw that chart from Ian Hartitz, which I think looks like he made it in Microsoft PowerPoint in 2005. But good work by Ian, though, nevertheless. It's been very up and down, to your point about Bo Nix. Like, there has been some big moments, but it's not been steady. I think even Broncos fans would admit to that. It's been a little bit of an up and down journey in that passing game so far. So are there any, streamer waiver wire quarterbacks you would actually consider playing over Bo Nix who might be, kind of widely available?
I'd have to pull up my rankings as we're talking about it here to remember all the names. This is the part that I'm.
You don't have those. You don't have those things just memorized.
I don't have. No, I don't have them etched in my brain here. Some of the guys that I talked about earlier in the week, like Matthew Stafford, if he was still available, definitely playing him over him. Jackson Dart now I think is well over the 50% mark, but he would be one of those guys. Sam Darnold. I also had Joe Flacco above him, but unfortunately we'll see if Joe Flacco is going to be healthy enough to play this week. And even if he is he going to be close enough to 100% where you want to consider playing him? Probably not. So Bo Nix right around like that QB 15 kind of range. But I certainly think this could be the kind of week where it all just kind of goes south and falls apart for that passing attack. And that's just what the Texans do to most teams, right? So it's not even his fault necessarily, but the matchup is brutal. And then the last guy that I'm scared about this week, it's one of my Bills, Dalton Kincaid, going against the Chiefs. He dealt with an injury around the bye there, but overall in the year, he's been held under 60 yards in all but one game this season. And we've talked about it before, right? That, he hasn't played more than 60% of the snaps in any of his games. His route participation just isn't where we want it to be, still under 70%. He's getting by because he's scoring touchdowns. And that is a very risky thing to trust for fantasy. Now, he's been able to do it. And we know the situation for low end tight end ones is basically if you get a touchdown any given week, you're probably going to crack the top 12. That's just the nature of the position. And yet, Dalton Kincaid, as a Bills fan, I'm not that excited to play him. I'm scared putting him in my lineup every week because I know what the floor is like if he doesn't find the end zone. And I just don't think that we can look at this matchup with the Chiefs as one where we can feel good about him putting up either a good yardage total or finding the end zone. The Chiefs are the fourth toughest opponent for fantasy tight ends. They've held every tight end that they've faced to 55 yards or less. So I hope this is like a reverse Halloween curse here, Harmon. I hope I'm doing it again. I've had that kind of reverse Midas touch where I mention these tight ends and then they go out in games and do the exact opposite of what I thought they would do. I hope that Kincaid proves me wrong here, but I think he is a very risky low-end tight end 1 and probably realistically more like a touchdown or bust tight end 2 this week.
I will just say that I totally agree with everything you said about Dalton Kincaid. That's obviously the way he's going to be. I think for the rest of the season, it's going to be just touchdown or bust.
Yeah.
For a couple guys, just real quick, I was going to say players that make me scared are actually many of my Washington Commander players, but we've got a whole section on that coming soon, so we don't need to get into that here. Later. So we'll put a pin in that one. The only other thing I'm scared about is that I'm going to pick the wrong Chargers receiver this week, because Keenan Allen kind of trending down from a snaps perspective. Oronde Gadsden trending up. QJ's been trending down. Could this be the week he gets back on the wire? We're not talking Titans in literally no one's games of the week. Somehow, some way, we've managed to avoid the Titans this week, so not going to talk about that there. But I don't have like a take there. It's just that somebody's going to smoke this Chargers team. It could be QJ as that downfield receiver. Talked about this last week with Alec Pierce's matchup, but how many targets is he going to get now that he's running most of those vertical routes? And for Keenan Allen, he's playing a lot less because they're kind of getting Trey Harris involved in the blocking game. Oronde Gadsden's playing. So that makes me a little nervous about those two guys in particular. There's some, like I have to play Keenan Allen for buys and stuff like that in a couple spots here. And I'm not quite sure how it's going to go. It's a good matchup, right? It's a really good matchup, but it technically was a good matchup for him as a zone beater in last week's game against the Minnesota Vikings, and they just controlled that one. They established the run, and he was not in there as the slot receiver. So that's why he's become a little bit riskier these last few weeks. So certainly someone that I'm a little scared of here on Halloween weekend.
Yeah, that's the worry that I have, is that they go up big in that game and they just lean on Kamani Vidal, and we don't see the kind of passing volume that you'd like from them. But I think this is just an excuse for you to bring up the pen gate, the pen meter again. The fact that Ladd McConkey is crushing it, and that you are very happy about it. You bringing up those Chargers receivers any chance you can now.
How dare you? I just like this offense, and I like this receiver room. The fact that I'm in the clear on the pen meter, wide receiver 17, Ladd McConkey, that has nothing to do with it. So how dare you, Justin Boone, insult my integrity. All right, let's get to your next six-pack of questions here.
Well, we're gonna stick in the AFC West here. What does this Chiefs backfield look like without Isaiah Pacheco? And Pacheco hasn't practiced either day this week. They called him week to week. Doesn't seem like he's going to play in this one. They have a bye next week, so it only makes sense to hold him out this week and then kind of reassess where things are at. But have we not seen this movie before? Like, have we not seen it? And it was a pretty good sample size last year as well, right? Isaiah Pacheco wasn't available. We saw Kareem Hunt get out there from week 3 to week 12. Pacheco sidelined. Hunt just takes over the lead back role. During that stretch, the RB 15 in fantasy points per game. And he's not like overly impressive. Like, he's just kind of getting what's blocked. He's at a different stage of his career now, but he's comfortable out there. They're comfortable with him in the offense. And I think this just all amounts to him being like a decent fantasy play. And he's right back in that RB2 mix in my mind. And then Brashard Smith, his value is going to go up in my opinion, but I don't know that it's going to go up that much, because I think there's a chance that they're going to get Elijah Mitchell involved here and kind of keep it like sort of a 3-man committee, even though Hunt would be the lead guy there. So yeah, Smith will get a few more touches, a few more opportunities. We know he can be explosive. We know he's good in the receiving game. So there's some value there to having him as an RB3 flex option. But I really think, even though it seems very boring, Kareem Hunt this week is a strong play in my mind. I don't know if you see it any differently, Harmon.
I'm with you on this Kareem Hunt thing, and I would love to be the guy that gets excited about Brashard Smith, a young running back who's shown some juice. But I don't know if you disagree with me, Boone, but I just haven't seen, because they're not asking him to do it, which I think makes a lot of sense, but I haven't seen a lot of evidence, even in the limited opportunities, that he can be a real running back. And I'm not saying that to say that he's secretly bad or he's a fake play or anything like that. I'm just like a guy that you hand the ball off 15 times. You run out there and he's your base back. I haven't seen any evidence in that based on how they've used him. They've used him as a guy that's like, all right, when he's out there, he's running a route, we're getting him a target. We're pitching it to him, stuff like that. And I think he will have increased usage doing that, but I don't think he will have different usages, that if that makes sense. And you look at Kareem Hunt, like it's the same thing as last year. He's crushing it in critical down and distance situations, around the goal line, short yardage. He has got to be the best short yardage back to be generally not that exciting anywhere else right now. And I think this is actually really well represented in his success rate on gap scheme runs, which the Chiefs run a fair bit. Just use their, especially lately, which I've actually really loved about their ground games. Like, we got a big badass offensive line that we've paid a lot of money to. Let's get under center and run it up the gut with behind these big boys that we've paid. Right now, among running backs with 50 plus carries this year, according to Fantasy Points data, Kareem Hunt ranks 6th in success rate on gap runs. It's not like a crazy big sample size, but this is what I'm saying. Success rate is like a down and distance metric. Like, he's helping move the offense. He's sandwiched between Rico Dowdle and Cam Scatterbo. Like, that's how good he's been in terms of moving the offense. And I just think, like, hey, we got to survive a game or two without Isaiah Pacheco. We know Kareem Hunt can do this. That's why they brought him back on the roster.
And the matchup for the Chiefs run game here is good. And there's also been times in the past where we've seen the Bills take an approach against the Chiefs where they try, especially a few years back when Mahomes was kind of operating at his peak level, that we saw the Bills kind of defend them where they backed off and tried to stop Mahomes. And we saw some big rushing games against them in those. And right now, I mean, Buffalo's still giving up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. And Hunt did get a start in that stretch that I talked about. He did get a start against the Bills in there last year. He only managed 60 carries on 14 carries with 60 yards. Sorry. But his big fantasy days really come when he finds the end zone, and Buffalo allowing the 2nd most rushing touchdowns this year, including at least 1 rushing TD to an RB in 6 of their last 7 games. So I think Hunt will find the end zone in this one, probably at least once. I'm not coming at this like a depressed Bills fan or by any means. I'm not upset. I'm not worried about the Chiefs. I think it's going to be a great game. The Bills are on their level now. It's not just the Chiefs beating up on Buffalo like they used to do. But there are some legitimate concerns that we have to look at, and that run defense has not been good. Ed Oliver out for the season now. It's a huge loss for Buffalo. He's strong against the run. So I think this is going to be a tough matchup for the Bills, and I think it's going to be an opportunity for Hunt to have a great game, even though when you look at him on your bench, you don't feel like super excited to put him into your lineup, whether it's as your RB2 or your flex. You don't necessarily feel great about it, but I think he's going to come through in this game. And then after the bye in week 10, we'll have to see how badly hurt Pacheco is and whether that could potentially lead to them maybe trading for someone. Like, if the injury to Pacheco is bad, could we see them make a move? We've speculated about it before, that wouldn't it be crazy if they went and got a Breece Hall or somebody like of that nature to add to this offense? They could do it. I mean, think about the 49ers going out and getting Christian McCaffrey years ago and what a boost that gave to an offense that was already pretty good at the time. It would be scary to think of a guy like Breece Hall joining this Chiefs attack. But we'll have to see how bad the Pacheco injury is, and we just don't know yet how bad it could be.
Yeah, we likely do expect him to miss this game. I will say, as we're sitting here, I think I'm coming up with my bold prediction for the week. Kareem Hunt, top 10 running back on the week 9 slate. I think I can see it. Because honestly, dude, this is I hate to say this, but the way the Chiefs are playing right now is just a really tough matchup for your Bills. Not only because of this this power ground game that we're talking about, which is exactly matchup for everybody. Given. Well, it's a tough matchup for everybody. I get that, but I'm saying specifically with how the Chiefs play on offense and versus how the Bills have typically played on defense, they have been susceptible to some of those power runs. We've seen it all throughout the course of the season. Thought we were going to see it more last week with the Panthers because they've been great on some of those power gap runs. And Andy Dalton just forgot how to play football as a 8-year-old veteran quarterback or whatever. I guess he hurt his thumb. Canales, kind of said that, hey, he hurt his thumb early in that game. Canales said, I have to imagine that played a part in terms of him not being good. I'm like, well, damn, it better have been why he didn't play very well. He did not play good football. But also the other part of it too is the Bills have always been very zone heavy. and Patrick Mahomes and Rashee Rice right now are just obliterating zone coverage on a weekly basis. So I just feel like even if Hunt doesn't have this good game on the ground, I could still see him popping in 2 goal line carries or something like that for a touchdown. So, which we've seen throughout the course of the year. So top 10 running back on the slate, Kareem Hunt. That's going to be my bold prediction for the week. Set it and forget it.
I think touchdowns are the way for him to get there. Yeah, I don't think he's going to have 100 yards rushing or anything like that. I think it is going to be through finding the end zone. And that's a thing that's going to happen a lot in this Chiefs offense because, yeah, they look fantastic. I don't think it really matters that it's the Bills as the matchup, though the Bills defense is struggling, right? Like there's some injuries out there for sure, but they just haven't been very good this year. And they've kind of picked on some weaker opponents in the weeks that they have looked okay. It's been against weaker competition, and this is going to be their toughest matchup so far. And it does not look good on paper. So a little bit worried about the Bills in this one. Not really that worried about Kareem Hunt, though, as weird as that sounds from a fantasy perspective.
God, what a time to be alive. We're 2025 and we're talking about Kareem Hunt. We're not worried about Kareem Hunt from a fantasy perspective. How could this possibly age poorly for us? I have no idea. All right, let's get to your third question here. We're going to stick in the AFC East for this one.
And another backfield. I just want to know, maybe you could tell me, we can talk through this. What is going on in the Patriots backfield at the moment, right? And let's recap a little bit here, right? So you go back, we've talked about Travion Henderson all season, since before the season, talked about him as a guy that could eventually take over this backfield, comes out, makes some rookie mistakes, doesn't really do much with his touches. Ramondre Stevenson just takes a strong hold on that backfield. And it looked like, okay, that's what this is going to be. It's going to be Ramondre leading the way. It's going to be Henderson getting, a little bit of work, but his role just not really changing. Finally, last time out, we did see him do something. The role didn't change that much, but he finally made some plays. He finally put up a decent yardage total. And it was like, okay, but the role didn't change. So he's just going to stick in that kind of one injury away kind of spot for fantasy. And then we find out this week, Ramondre Stevenson dealing with this injury that we don't really know how bad this could potentially be. And I wonder if the team is kind of sitting on this a little bit, because there's been rumors out there that they're trying to potentially trade for a running back. We've heard it from, big time writers like Mike Reese, who does a great job covering the team. We've also heard it from, guys like, Ricky Scoops on social media, who, which is, there it is right there, right? Like, and we don't know. Is he reading the tea leaves? Is he actually connected to someone? We're not sure, but it's fun to watch everyone react to his tweets anyway. But regardless, there's a lot of smoke out there that there could be a trade for a running back. Well, what does that tell you? That tells you that, hey, this Ramondre Stevenson injury, could this be a problem? Could this be something that keeps him out for a while? I also wondered when I saw the team sign 2 running backs to their practice squad this week, right? Rashawn Baker, Jonathan Ward. When that happens, that normally is like an early sign that one of the backs on the roster is hurt and potentially going to miss some time. That's kind of scary to me.
This meme is great.
Figure, okay, we needed that one injury for Ramondre Stevenson to move out of the way and Henderson to get an opportunity. And this week, it seems like if that's the case, Ramondre not practicing, looks like maybe Henderson will get a shot this week to potentially prove something. But we're also going to see Terrell Jennings out there. We know the coaching staff likes him. I don't think they're just going to hand this thing over to Henderson completely. And like we've brought up a bunch of times, Henderson keeps making these kind of rookie mistakes, right? So could that happen in game where he makes another mistake, he blows a pass protection, and all of a sudden he gets his snaps taken back? Like, I'm just kind of painting the whole picture of what we know about his situation, because all of this is on the table. On top of the fact that with all this smoke that there could be a trade, could this be a destination for a big fish like Breece Hall, or, a medium level fish, I guess, like a Tony Pollard, or just one of the depth kind of pieces like a Jerome Ford, a Devin Singletary, kind of a veteran who can come in there and be next to someone like Henderson. It's just a really interesting situation that we're still trying to figure out as the week goes, because it's possible Ramondre could come back on Friday. It's possible he could still get out there this week, but seems to be trending in the wrong direction right now. And it looks like Henderson, if he gets a start, could be like a low-end RB2, high-end RB3, a very, very risky one. But that's probably the range that I'm going to have him ranked in if Ramondre is not playing. And then again, we'll reassess after that whether he has a good game or not, and whether we find out anything more about the Ramondre injury.
Okay, so you said the name Jerome Ford. If you didn't say it, I was going to call my shot and say that's the guy they trade for, Jerome Ford, from the Cleveland Browns. Mike Vrabel was there as a consultant last year, or some sort of, nebulous assistant job with the Browns last season. People forget about that. So I'm just trying to put the tea leaves together there. And I think that's the name they go for, right? Because they have liked Terrell Jennings a little bit. I don't know if this Ramondre injury is long-term. And they do still want to get Travion Henderson going to some degree. And so Jerome Ford would be the type of guy that they can, all right, we need a vet to start a few games for us. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get Jerome Ford in there to kind of take some of those base carries, because what I noticed from Henderson last week, Boone, and I think he will if Stevenson misses this game, I don't know if it's enough to make him anything. I don't know that I'll rank him inside my top 30 backs regardless, basically, because we just haven't seen him be trusted in that way. What I noticed actually, and I should have mentioned this yesterday on the rookie check-in show with Nate, they used a fullback on the vast majority of his big plays last week, where it's just like toss, I formation, toss. And I think that's because Henderson, they're not confident that he can read out the plays right now. So it's like, let's just get him on the perimeter, pitch it to him, toss it to him, and let him get a runway like that. And that could lead to a couple big plays for sure. It's very possible. Obviously, I think Falcons hit or miss, but I think that could be a part of what they see in this game. But they've been more susceptible to running it right at them, right, in terms of the Atlanta defense. That's how they've struggled. So I think they're trying to get Travion Henderson going. Reporters asked Josh McDaniels about this, like, hey, we noticed that you what was the thought process there? Just pitching it to him on the outside. He's like, well, nobody wasn't a surprise that he's fast. We all know that, right? So they're still trying to get Travion Henderson going, but I don't know, even if Stevenson is out, if it's enough to make him a fantasy starter.
Well, the matchup, and you kind of touched on it there, the matchup is favorable, right? Like Atlanta giving up the 11th most fantasy points to running backs, and they've been hit particularly hard lately, like 91 and a touchdown to Devon Achane, 66 and a TD to Ollie Gordon in that same game, 201 and 2 TDs to CMC. That's just the last 2 games that they've played, right? Yeah. 3 running backs having pretty good results there. So certainly if he gets the start, if he gets the volume, if he doesn't screw up in any ways that are going to frustrate the coaching staff and make them want to just stick him to the bench, then yeah, he could go out there and have a good game. But that's why I'm saying it's a very risky play. There's some upside there for sure, but it is a risky play. But when you look at the players, like there's some bye weeks right now. Obviously we got some injuries. You start to look at the players like in the 20s in the running back rankings, and it's not that hard to push him up into that range. I haven't done it yet. I've left Stevenson in there for the time being. But that was obviously my rankings went up earlier today, and that was before we found out that he was going to miss a second straight practice. So I'll probably take Stevenson out, whether I do it before the Thursday nighter or whether I do it as I update over the weekend. And yeah, it's really trending towards Henderson finally getting that opportunity. And then it's just a matter of, can he do something with it? And I think in this matchup, he probably can. I think he'll be a decent fantasy option, not a week winner type, but a guy that you could put in your lineup as sort of a risky, low end RB2, or better yet, a flex play if he can, and just hope that he hits a couple of those big plays like you're talking about.
Even last week, obviously, 17.6 points allowed to Miami, to Devon Achane, 13 to Ollie Gordon. The way those guys got there is instructive, though. For Achane, it was not really as a rusher. 18 carries for sub 70 yards, 3-something yards per carry. But Ollie Gordon was the guy who actually ran pretty well against them, because it's kind of what I'm saying is those big backs. And I know CMC's not a big back, but they ran a lot of gap concepts and power stuff, run them over. That's how you beat this Falcons run defense. So that's kind of just parsing out that matchup. We'll see if Henderson can get that done. So I don't know. We asked the YouTube chat in terms of what they think. They're pretty split on this. So do you trust Travion Henderson if Ramondre Stevenson misses week 9? 56% said yes, the breakout is incoming. No, 44% no, Vrabel hates him. I don't know if Mike Vrabel hates him, but I don't know if Mike Vrabel trusts him. Let's put it like that. So we'll see if Travion Henderson is able to get it going. But if he does, cool. If he doesn't, that's why he's in the coping corner. We don't send us any panic.
This is one of those. it's just one of those funny things too, where like there's so many different ways to get to a result, right? And before the season, people touting Henderson, which I thought he would have a much better year than he's had, of course. You just figured that that was going to happen naturally, that they took him where they did. He got the good draft capital, and that eventually he would overtake a sort of boring veteran like Ramondre Stevenson. And yet it took not only an Antonio Gibson injury, but now potentially a Ramondre Stevenson injury just to create an opportunity for Henderson to get out there, because without this, that was not coming, right? He was just kind of the change of pace guy. He was playing 25% of the snaps. It did not look like this was ramping up towards him eventually taking over the lead back job. And you wonder, with the talk and with all these reports of a potential trade coming, is that tipping their hand? Is that saying that we don't trust Henderson? We need somebody else in here if Ramondre can't go? I kind of think it is. Like, they're telling us what they think about him. And it's not like, oh man, finally the young rookie's going to get his shot and he's going to step in and take over. It really seems like they're probably worried about this as well, and that they think he's going to go out there and potentially do something foolish that could cost them the game. So it's just a very weird situation, and it's too bad because Ramondre Stevenson was having a really good season. You hope that this injury isn't something that's going to completely derail that. You hope he's going to be able to get back soon and get back out there and be a decent fantasy play and a great value, which he's been so far. But we'll see. Henderson's potentially going to get his opportunity this week, and I hope he can come through with it.
And what we know for sure is that they do need something from the ground game. They need a different dimension there because they have not been a good run team this year. From a success rate standpoint, they're low. From an EPA per rush standpoint, they're low. They're 27th in rushing success rate. Like, they need something else in this way. So maybe Henderson could still be the answer. 31st in EPA per rush, by the way, as well. Because Drake May is cooking. This team should view itself as a contender. Scott Pianowski was right. History will remember that Scott Pianowski was right. But they need something from this ground game. That is for sure. All right. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we've got more questions to answer for week 9. We'll get into that right after this. All right, we're back. We're continuing to preview the Week 9 slate. Boone, let's hear it. What is your fourth question for the week?
So which duo returning from injury is going to have the biggest impact in Week 9? And we got a bunch of them that we could talk about here. We're not totally sure that all these guys are going to be back, but it seems like it's trending in the right direction for them. So Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers on the Raiders, Nico Collins and Christian Kirk on the Texans, Drake London and Michael Penix Jr. on the Falcons, and then Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. on the Cardinals. And I mean, Drake London and Nico Collins, they started the week with limited practices. We're going to have to keep monitoring them here. They also have more challenging matchups. Like, I think the matchups alone added to the injury, we're kind of going to bump them down, at least I am, into maybe the high-end wide receiver 2 range, where normally we would have them ranked as top 10 wide receivers probably every single week for fantasy. London's going to be squaring off with Christian Gonzalez in the Patriots secondary. Collins has to deal with the Broncos defense. And yes, Pat Surtain probably not going to be out there, but that defense is still pretty good. That secondary is still pretty strong. It's going to be a challenging unit for them. And when fully healthy, I would talk about these guys as like every single time. If they're out there, you are putting them in your lineup, no questions asked. And yet we need to know for sure that they're 100%, right? And it seems like Collins is going to clear the protocol. So he should be back, and that's not an injury like a knee or an ankle or something. So not necessarily going to have a huge impact on his body, but will he be out there, and will he be himself coming off the concussion? For London, I mean, again, another guy that we were high on before the season, a guy who can get a ton of volume, a guy who's so important for that offense, like we were talking about earlier. But if he's not 100%, do we trust him like we normally would in a tough matchup? So for me, I'm going with Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. I think they're going to have the biggest impact, because the Raiders offense without these guys, like, really, what is the Raiders offense? Like, Ashton Genty has not done that much this season. He can't do it all by himself. He needs some blocking. He needs some other players out there who can draw attention away. It's been a minute since we've seen Bowers on the field. And I think in some of those games before, when he was injured and kind of playing through it, people started to get like a negative perception about him because he wasn't producing the same like he did last year, like he did in week 1. But now it seems like he's fully healthy and he's coming back to the lineup at the right time, right? He's going to face the Jaguars defense that's given up a touchdown to a tight end in 3 of their last 4, the 13th most fantasy points to tight ends this season. If you go back to last year, he got to play them one time in that great rookie season, caught 11 of 13 targets for 99 yards. Dude is a superstar. He is a league winner. If this guy is fully healthy, I think people need to remember just how good he can be. And I'm hoping that he is fully healthy. But just in case people are forgetting, like 112 catches, almost 1,200 yards last year, 5 touchdowns, did all that as a rookie. And then this year, before he got hurt, over 100 yards in week 1. So don't be down on him because of what happened in those games and he was trying to play through the injury. I think we just need to look at it and say, hey, great, Brock Bowers is back. Is he 100% or close to it? Can he get back to being that player that we know he can be when healthy? I think there's a good chance that we're going to see him do that. And then Jacoby Myers, he's practicing in full. I mean, he started the season fairly hot too. Wasn't finding the end zone, but started the season fairly hot in terms of yardage, then kind of cooled off for a little bit, but was dealing with some injuries, got a little banged up. And you got to think about this, right? Like all the trade rumors around him asking at one point to be traded, he's auditioning for other teams, right? Like the deadline is next week. Could he go out there? We talk about guys in a contract year coming out and having big seasons. Could he go out there this week and have like a trade week where he's just auditioning for these other teams? I think that could be like a little extra motivation. Now, it's just tiny little data point, just a little narrative based thing there. But I think that could be a little extra motivation for him this week. So I think that duo going up against the Jags defense, which even for receivers, I mean, they're the 8th best matchup for fantasy receivers. So both these guys are in good spots. Hopefully they're both healthy. I think out of that list, they're the 2 that make the biggest impact on their team and are going to have a big impact for fantasy too.
I actually wonder if the fact that it almost seems like destiny that he's getting traded before the deadline on Tuesday, because they signed Tyler Lockett and he, like, reporters asked Jacoby Myers, do you still want to get traded? He goes, yep. Well, he's like, yeah, I do. Nothing has changed. I almost wonder if that might be a data point for him to like, I'm still hurt. Like I'm coming out of the bye. I'm not playing, like, because apparently the Raiders want a day 2 draft pick for him, but it's like, dude, you're not getting a day. I like Jacoby Myers, always been a Jacoby Myers guy. You're not getting a day 2 draft pick for Jacoby Myers on an expiring contract. Give me a break. Like, so just at one point, like, does he just kind of force their hand? Like, hey, I'm not playing for you. Like, just trade me already. I mean, give me a break. That's possible.
Does the team make that decision, right? The team could make a business decision where they say, let's keep him sitting and let's not have an injury that's going to impact any possible trade. That and if he was limited to start the week, but I'm almost positive he was full yesterday. I didn't see their practice participation today, but full to start the week. I think it would be hard for them just to completely sit him down. It would have to be maybe a healthy scratch, but Yeah, all those things have to be taken into consideration. Even if he doesn't play, I mean, I think Bowers could have a big enough game that he might carry that duo
Oh
by
yeah.
himself. But yeah, I think they're in a decent spot, even though there's sort of a lot of variables around the Jacoby Myers situation.
For Bowers, it's just any of these young guys. I get it. Sometimes the veterans, like, you want to push through the injury, like Juwan Jennings is pushing through all these injuries to try to get a contract. I mean, I remember when we had Austin Eckler on Eckler's Edge when he was trying to get a contract and he was hurt and he's like, I'm trying to get out there, man. I can't be missing games or whatever, because you're trying to get a new deal. That's one thing. But for these young guys that are on a rookie contract, Bowers, and I think Ricky Pearsall's basically had the same PCL injury, or at least it's kind of similar. And as a Ricky Pearsall, I'm like, I want him to play, right? I want to see more of Pearsall. I've got Pearsall on fantasy, but I'm like, don't go out there and put bad tape up. So yeah, like you said, people are trashing you on the internet. Go get healthy so that when you're back, you're all the way back. And I think Bowers at this point coming off the bye, hopefully he's all the way back because this passing game needs him. I don't know if Geno Smith's going to be any better just because Brock Bowers is out there, because I think just Geno's been bad on his own, but it certainly can't hurt to have a guy like Brock Bowers who was supposed to be the engine of this whole offense. I want to talk about the Nico Collins, Christian Kirk thing for a second, because the Kirk one, that's just tough. I mean, Nico being back, it's going to make the whole offense better. I don't need any like Ewing theory stuff with him about how they actually had a good game without Nico. In fact, I'm like, some of the stuff you did with other players, can we please now do that with Nico Collins, Nick Caley? Come on, like let's get this thing going here. Can we do that? But for Christian Kirk, does his return block the ascension of Jalen Noel? Do we see Jaden Higgins go back to being a part-time player? Because Xavier Hutchinson had a good game last week too, and he was playing ahead of Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel in previous weeks. So the Texans are very committed to their veterans. Just when we thought Woody Marks was taking the job over earlier this year, no, it's back to Nick Chubb, and it's kind of been a wandering eye in that backfield. Do we see something similar? Because Kirk's not a fantasy starter, I think, in any situation, but he could definitely disrupt the second half ascension for guys like Higgins and Noel.
I think there's a very good chance that he disrupts it. And part of it is that, I mean, as of a couple of weeks ago, they didn't seem to feel that great about those rookies. They weren't working them in as much as we would have liked to have seen. But also, like, go back to the preseason and how the team and the coaching staff were talking about Christian Kirk. They were calling him the slot demon. They were all excited about what he brought to the offense. And I mean, to his credit, he's only, a year or two removed from like a decent season. Like, I don't think he's a guy that has like no juice left in the tank. I certainly think he can give this offense something. But we'd like to see those rookies get going, and we kind of saw it. But yeah, I think it's going to be put back in the box because I don't think they're superstar types that now have to be in the offense, even though we might want them to. I think Christian Kirk, being that veteran guy, is going to come back in and basically push them back down the ladder. And it's unfortunate because, like you said, I don't know that Kirk is ever going to get back to being a guy that you want to have in your fantasy lineup. But these other guys, the rookies, totally could. Like, let's get Higgins. Let's get Noel out there doing something. I don't think it's going to happen, Harmon. I think this is a serious problem for people that are holding those guys that maybe even used them in their lineup last week or the week before. I think it's a real problem, Christian Kirk being there and kind of blocking them.
How do you feel about Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison against the Cowboys secondary that's given up so much production to basically everybody? Ray was trying to get me excited earlier this week, and I couldn't quite get there. Can you get excited about these guys?
I can't. I just can't. I mean, Kyler, like, I talked about it, I think, on Fantasy Football Live. It might have even been last week where it was, the teams that we're kind of just sick of hearing about. And for me, like, the Cardinals are one of them. Like, Kyler Murray has not been a good fantasy quarterback. He's just kind of surviving on name alone right now. Could he have a good week this week in the ideal matchup? Yeah, he definitely could. But so far this season, he hasn't finished as a top 15 fantasy quarterback in any week. It's been embarrassing, I think, for him that Jacoby Brissett steps in and is able to kind of elevate that passing attack. So I think he needs to come out and have a good game. I think there's a good chance that he does, like I said, because of the matchup. And yet I'm not going to be fooled. I'm not going to bite and think that that's some launch point for the rest of the season. I think that will just be a 1 week matchup based performance. I don't think Kyler has it, especially for fantasy this year. And I do think it's a problem for the likes of Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. We've kind of already established, like, to me, Marvin Harrison Jr. is that boomer bust kind of wide receiver 3 option. And could he have a big game in the right matchup? Of course he could. Will he score touchdowns and that'll make him fantasy worthy? Of course. But I think when you put Kyler back in there, it bumps Trey McBride down just a little bit, not necessarily in terms of the rankings, but in terms of like his projection on the week, the potential for touchdowns, all that sort of stuff. It's a bad situation to me in Arizona. And I think it's a bad situation that's going to get worse.
Can I share some sad stats with you about the Cardinals passing game? With
Sure.
Jacoby Brissett in his 2 games as the starter averaged 274 passing yards per game and the team converted 57% of their third down plays. That ranked second and first in that 2-week span. Under Kyler Murray in the first 5 weeks, they were 30th and 17th in those 2 numbers. So, yeah, that's the state of the Cardinals passing game right now. Even my dog is crying about it. That's how bad the Cardinals are. All right, let's get to your 5th question of the week here, Boone.
Before we get to this, actually, it kind of ties into all the injuries that I want to talk about in a second, but I'm just seeing from Ian Rappaport here that Woody Marks added to the injury report with a calf injury today. Don't like to see that. We were talking about the Texans offense there and the rookies finally getting more opportunity.
Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. What year is this?
It might be. And of course, just because a player gets added to the injury report midweek, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to miss the game, but just something that I saw pop up right now. So we'll keep an eye on that one over the next couple of days to see if Woody Marks can get out there. Obviously, last week I mentioned Woody Marks as somebody that I thought could potentially break out in the second half of the season. I still think that's the case, but hopefully he's going to be healthy here. Now, we'll stick on the injury front, and I just want to know, can the Commanders get back on track after all the injuries that they've dealt with and all the injuries that they're still dealing with here, right? Like Jaden Daniels back to full participation in practice, so it seems like he should suit up this week. But Terry McLaurin, he re-injures his quad. He's going to be out for week 9, and I think he's likely going to miss a bunch of time after that. So the hope was like Terry McLaurin comes back, we finally get all these guys healthy, and we see a version of this offense that maybe we haven't even seen yet this year because of McLaurin's holdout and all these injuries. And yet now, I don't think that's going to be the case. You hope that Jaden Daniels is healthy and that he doesn't go back out there and re-aggravate that hamstring injury again. And if he's going to be out there this week, is he going to be 100%? Can he be like that superstar version of Jaden Daniels that lifts all boats, that gets this offense to a place where we need it to be for fantasy? We don't know for sure if he's 100% or if he's kind of pushing to get back out there to keep this team in the hunt. So we got to keep an eye on that one as well. I mean, this matchup with the Seahawks, it's pretty much bad across the board. Like the only position where they're even remotely generous in fantasy is to tight end. So Zach Ertz may be a streamer, but he's another one of those guys that are like touchdown or bust kind of streaming option. Daniels needs to be 100%. Now, to me this week, I'm not putting him right back up in like the top 5, top 6 where he would normally be. I have him more down to like that mid to low end QB1 for fantasy. Because Debo also been dealing with injuries. He's really cooled off the last couple of games since a very strong start from him. And with McLaurin out, we go back to like, okay, Chris Moore or Jalen Lane or Luke McCaffrey, all these guys kind of getting opportunity. None of them really get the volume that they need to be like a trusted fantasy option. You just kind of hope that they hit on a big play or score a touchdown or something like that to come through. So they're all very, very risky. And it's not just a 1-for-1 that McLaurin's out and you can grab one of those guys and put them in your lineup. And then the backfield, Harmon, like this has just been one of the most frustrating situations because Bill Krosky-Merritt, he has been set up to succeed in terms of like volume and opportunity. It's been there for him lately, but with the injuries around him, he's not getting the positive game scripts, right? And he doesn't have a huge role in the passing game. So when they fall behind, it's bye-bye CMC, and we start to see Jeremy McNichols getting more opportunity, which isn't great for fantasy by any means. Chris Rodriguez at least has taken like a back seat as the number 3 guy. So it's not so much that 3-man committee anymore. But honestly, like I think JCM, he's going to be a pretty intriguing buy low to me the next couple of weeks because he's got 2 bad matchups. He's got to go against the Seahawks. Then he's got to go against the Lions in week 10. I'm not really projecting big games for him in either of those. But then he gets the Dolphins in week 11. And then in the fantasy playoffs, there's a few nice matchups there as well. Giants in week 15, Cowboys in week 17. So I'm looking at this kind of from all angles. Like if you're a contender, if you want to try to make a trade for JMC or JCM after this game, there's so many guys with like, the initials that we go with now starts to get a little confusing. But if you want to make a trade for JCM after this game, or maybe even after that Lions game, if he has two bad ones, I think that could be a smart move, because if you can get him cheap after some disappointing outings, I do still think there's the potential, because who else are they going to unless they trade for someone? Like, he has the ability to do this. We just need to see that environment around him kind of coming through and everyone being healthy. And it starts with Jaden Daniels being back out there, which is a good step. But man, this game, like, Seahawks favored by 2.5 on the road. I don't think this is a great spot for the Commanders unless Daniels is clearly 100% and can kind of just vault everyone back up to where they were last year.
I think you said that perfectly about specifically JCM is exactly kind of how I would view this. I'd let him have a bad game here if I didn't have him, and then I'd go try to trade for him after this, because that Dolphins game is coming, even if you have to survive the next game, because I think he's playing well. It's just the problem of the type of back he is for fantasy. Like, when his team is not good, and his team's not as good as we thought. Well, I was kind of down on the Commanders coming into this year. They were my disappointment team, but still, they're worse than people thought they were going to be, and that's just tough. Like, for this back who doesn't play in the pass game, even if he's pushed Chris Rodriguez to the side, that's just really difficult in terms of him scoring fantasy points in those negative game scripts. That doesn't mean he's bad, and I still think the rushing game has generally been good this year. Like, I think their offensive line has punched above its weight yet again this year, especially on the interior. So I would target JCM as a buy low, but I agree with your points about the Commanders in this game. I think this is a really tough matchup for them going against that Seahawks defense. But kind of let's use that to sort of jump into your sixth and final question here, Boone, which is one that everybody wants to hear about as the season gets to the midpoint here.
Yeah, well, last week we talked about the second half breakout candidates, and we went over one player at every position. I want to do the same here. Who are the top sleepers in the second half of the season? So if we're going a little bit deeper on this, and the first guy I want to bring up is somebody that we talked about extensively before the season. People have kind of cooled off on him a little bit now, but Bashaw Tutin on the Jags. Everybody's gotten focused on Travis Hunter after that big game before the bye. Now they're coming back from the bye. People are overreacting, I would say, to the quotes that Liam Cohen had about how they're going to play their best 11 coming off the bye. I do think that's good news for Hunter.
Willing it into existence. We're willing it into existence.
And that's part of the reason why last week we talked about him as a breakout candidate in the second half of the season. So yes, that is good news for him. But what could that mean for Tutu or for Bashaw Tutin as well? Travis Etienne was undeniable at the start of the year. In that opening month, he was playing very well. He was extremely productive. Over the last 3 games, not so much, not breaking as many big runs, not finding the end zone. And some of that is certainly attributable to like the offensive struggles as a whole at times. It's not all on Etienne, but what we do know about Tutin, he's a big play threat. He's a guy that can find the end zone. He's done some of that already this season in his limited opportunities. Now, his role has stayed like pretty small so far this year. Hasn't played more than 30% of the snaps in a single game. He's only hit 10 touches once, but prior to the bye, he played a season high 29% of the snaps. And I'm not suggesting that he's going to come out of the bye and like take over the starting job or anything like that. But could we see that post-bye rookie bump for someone like him, someone we know the organization really likes? Their GM, James Gladstone's talked about him as a player that he really liked even before he got the job. Could he potentially turn this into like a 60-40, 65-35 backfield and just start to dispatch LaQuint Allen and start to show that he's someone that deserves more opportunities, start to make some big plays, start to kind of carve out that bigger role. And as the year goes along, all of a sudden he becomes a potential fantasy starter for us. I'm willing to chase that. I know the kind of player that he is. And if he gets that opportunity, and maybe it'll be like the Patriots where it takes that injury to the veteran starter, and then all of a sudden Tutin gets that chance. But I think he is still one of the better stashes to have on your bench, Harmon.
I like this a lot. The run game had been really good at certain points for Jacksonville this year, especially, again, as we mentioned earlier, they were doing, or well, I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but we were talking about the Jags and kind of just different stuff earlier this week. And they've really used a lot of these zone runs this year. And that really fits Bashaw Tutin. So he fits the scheme. We know the team likes him, of course. So I love this one as just like a running back sleeper, a stash right now. If you're a good team and you can afford the bench space, cut your wide receiver 5 that you're never playing, your backup tight end, any of that, and just stick Bashal Tutin on your bench. If I could throw out a running back here, just
Sure.
a much deeper name, and probably less appealing if he does get the starting job, but Devin Neal for the Saints. Kendre Miller's been out. They immediately used him as a complimentary player. He's a little banged up this week, but Alvin Kamara also banged up as well. A guy that I think is just I love the way Nate described him during the draft process as kind of a coach's favorite type of running back, just teach tape guy that is not exciting. He's not flashy, but he's going to get the yards that are there. And God, like the Saints really need that at this point. I don't mean to be mean to Alvin Kamara, a guy who's been really good for us for years, but that has not been present in the Saints run game so far. So he's, again, a deeper stash name, but still sort of the same variety.
No, I think that's a good call. And yeah, not a guy who's like excels and is excellent at like any one thing, but just kind of does everything well enough. And yeah, that could be enough in this offense, especially with Alvin Kamara not looking like the same player, but also we're seeing it with Tyler Shuck, right? As the year goes along, are they just going to want to look a little more at some of these young guys they have, get them some more opportunity? They don't really need to see much more from Alvin Kamara. So once they're out of, I would argue they already are, but once they're out of the playoff hunt, then do they start to turn to some of these younger guys? Once they're mathematically, let's say, out of the playoff hunt, do they turn to some of these younger guys? And I think they probably do. And I think Neal is certainly on this list now that unfortunately Kendre Miller is not around. The second name I want to bring up, and we're going to go to receiver. I want to hear I don't know if you've given your Pat Bryant take, at least not when I've been on the show, but Pat Bryant on the Broncos played over 50% of Denver snaps in 4 consecutive outings here, just scored his first NFL touchdown on Sunday. He's also been above a 50% route participation in 3 of his last 4 outings. Shout out to our buddy JJ Zacharyson for that one. That's way, way up from earlier in the season. So he's still in that like rotation behind Courtland Sutton with Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims Jr. and those guys. But the fact that we're seeing a promising rookie start to get more opportunity, start to do something with it, I think that's only going to lead to more usage, to more snaps. I think it's very exciting, and I think this offense needs that second option. Evan Ingram at tight end, not going to be that guy. They have the good backs in the backfield. They need somebody else in the passing game other than Courtland Sutton. So I'm treating him as a deep stash for now. I'm not going to go and say, okay, 4 for 40 in the touchdown last week, I could put him in my flex spot. You have to be in a very deep league for that, but he's the kind of player like that physical style. He's got that nose for the end zone. I think that could turn him into a fantasy option as the season goes along here, Harmon.
I like this a lot, and it's funny. Nate was on the show yesterday for the rookie check-in, and he and I said I feel like him and I talk about Pat Bryant once a week, so it's funny that you and I have not talked about him. But yeah,
I'm forgetting. I mean, my brain is probably overused this time of year, so my memory is probably not the best at the moment. But I don't recall your Pat Bryant take, so let's hear it.
It's a lot of shows, buddy. It's fine. With Pat Bryant, I think he fits so perfectly in the kind of big slot role that's missing in this offense right now. They're getting Troy Franklin involved as kind of the speed slot guy, and that's been successful for kind of splash plays, designer stuff for the most part. But Bryant, what I've noticed watching him lately is that they're using him as an outbreaking option against zone coverage, which they need that. They take advantage of the in-breaking stuff really well with Courtland Sutton and, again, Troy Franklin kind of working in those short and underneath areas. And we know Marvin Mims has his specific role, but there's like a chunk of the pass game that you can just feel watching the Broncos that's missing right now. And I think that Pat Bryant could be the guy to fill that role. So he's definitely somebody, those second half of the season rookies, really good under the radar name that people probably aren't considering. So I like that recommendation by you. I'll give 2 like rookie receivers here. One is Jalen Noel, and I don't need to talk too much about him, but just again, he's not highly rostered right now, and we've talked so much about him the last few weeks. We don't need to like hammer that point home, but really good player. And he is truly exactly what this Texans passing offense needs. I don't know if they agree with the way I just said that so emphatically, though. That's the problem. So one guy that I think is similar to the Pat Bryant kind of mold, hasn't really shown us much yet, but is kind of what the team needs. Jack Besh is a guy in with the Raiders as like a deep sleeper second half. He started to play a little bit more. The whole team had a terrible game against the Chiefs. I kind of just throw that out. The 2 games prior, I thought he was playing really well in isolation, then kind of a bad game against the Chiefs before the bye. But Myers probably vacating that slot receiver position, and he's a guy that can help this team hit singles and doubles. That's been the problem for the Raiders pass game all year. It's been a lot of long ball guys. Trey Tucker's been good in that role, but Besh has not been able to get on the field and kind of sustain that level of usage. Let's see if he can do it, because he's definitely somebody that I think has the talent and the skills to fit in that kind of power slot archetype that the league is taking over the league right now, these zone beater types. So he's one I'd mention as well.
Yeah, I like those guys. I've talked about them in my waiver wire column. I've had them in my deep stashes column at times this year. So yeah, I like both of those ones. If we go to tight end too, Colston Loveland on the Bears. I mean,
yeah.
I saw Cole Kmet, I think, was back at practice today. So I'm hoping that just doesn't completely, talking about like Christian Kirk coming back for the Texans earlier and blocking the rookies. Let's hope that Cole Kmet coming back and potentially doesn't block Colston Loveland here. But Loveland is a first-round pick. This is a guy that the team wants him to ascend, and I think the team needs him to ascend in this passing game. And we saw before the bye, it was with Kmet out, but Loveland, season highs in playing time, played 81% of the snaps, targets 5, and yards with 38. And that's what you want to see. You want to see these rookies moving into more opportunity and succeeding with it. So let's get this dude going, Ben Johnson. Like, why not, right? Luther Burden is in concussion protocol. DJ Moore, Olamide Zaccheaus, they aren't the answer, at least in my opinion. I don't think they're the guys that are really going to vault this offense to another level. So they need that new wrinkle, and I think it could come in the form of Colston Loveland. And what better spot to get him going, Harmon, than this week against the Bengals? They give up the most fantasy points to tight ends this year. Harmon, in their last 6 games, the Bengals have allowed 10 touchdowns to tight ends in their last 6 games alone. So if you're looking for that, deep tight end sleeper, like he was somebody that was maybe drafted in the late rounds. He was dropped in a lot of leagues. He hasn't really done that much this season. You can go and get him. I think of all those guys that are on the waiver wire, he might have the best chance of any of them to step up and become a top 12 fantasy tight end at some point this year down the stretch. So stash him. Let's see if he can make that happen. And if you're in like a crazy, crazy deep league, it's not even that insane to consider playing him this week just because that matchup is so good.
I hear you. Yeah, I'm hoping he has a big. I'm hoping this whole Bears passing game has a big week this week, because this, like, stylistically, it's the exact type of defense that Ben Johnson's offense should be able to smoke. And I mean, it's not a coincidence that the Jets had their best offensive, maybe one of their best offensive performances of the season after a Ben Johnson disciple crushed them last week in Tanner Engstrand, the Jets offensive coordinator. I will just say real quickly, I'm gonna do the curse here. I'm gonna try to pull a Boone. Isaiah Likely is a guy I would consider as a sleeper the rest of the way. Really good rest of season schedule. I think he's a guy they want to get a little more involved. They wanted to give a contract to, so somebody that you could stash there. Real quick, Boone, make a case for a quarterback here before we toss to break.
This name's going to seem a little different than the others because he's a guy who's done it before, but Brock Purdy. I think people are sleeping on Brock Purdy, and it's just because the injury, right? He's been out for a while. I saw even right before I started talking about him here that it popped up that he's limited again in practice today. Based on the way the team's talking about it doesn't really seem like he's necessarily going to play in week 9. I would think that maybe week 10 is more likely, but we'll keep monitoring that one. Regardless, don't forget how good this guy can be. Top 12 fantasy quarterback in fantasy points per game each of the last 2 seasons. And kind of overall, that 49ers offense getting a little healthier, right? It looks like Ricky Pearsall is going to come back soon. Brandon Ayuk, I would say, in the next month or so. So down the stretch, they're going to have all these weapons back. We've seen Purdy produce as a strong fantasy option before, so don't sleep on him. He's been dropped in a bunch of leagues. Go get him. You're going to be able to start him if you're having quarterback troubles. Grab him, start him down the stretch. He should not be out there in any leagues. He's too good of an option.
I love it. All right, we are going to take our next quick break. We come back, literally no one's games of the week right after this. All right, welcome back. Let's get into literally no one's games of the week. All right, let's get into it here. We've got 3 dust ball games to talk through here, although it was a pretty interesting slate. I wouldn't say these were total train wrecks. But first, let's start with Bears at Bengals. First of all, before we talk Bears, Boone, we might not get Joe Flacco this week. Like, we're showing Joe Flacco here, but he's been limited in practice. He's dealing with like a shoulder thing. This can't possibly come to an end, right? I just bid a bunch of money on Chase Brown on my guillotine league. So, like, please tell me this is not happening.
I don't know. And we're going to have to watch this one right up until the end here to see if Flacco's going to be out there. And then, like I said earlier, if Flacco is out there, is he 100%? Or is he out there because they just are that desperate that they're putting an older quarterback out there at 70 or 80%? Because that's better than what they were getting from Jake Browning. But I will say, if they do have to go to Jake Browning, I've brought this up before, but remember how tough that schedule was when he got those starts earlier in the year and he was struggling and the entire offense was struggling.
That's a great point.
If he's asked to start against the Bears, I mean, it would by far be the friendliest matchup that he's gotten so far this season. So that gives him a little bit of hope. Chicago allowing the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. It doesn't make him a streaming option by any means, but could potentially allow Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Chase Brown to still get there. And you don't want to keep, harking back to a couple of years ago when Browning got some starts, but he was able to keep those guys viable. Can he do that in an easier matchup this season? He might be able to. So I'm not totally out on Jake Browning just because he really struggled in those tough matchups. But yeah, I want Joe Flacco out there. I am hoping that Joe Flacco is under center for all of my, Chase Brown and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase bags.
Same. Absolutely same. It is funny. I wonder if we'd be talking about, God, please no Jake Browning, if he had been the one that got to play the Steelers and the Jets instead of Joe Flacco. It's a great point about that schedule for sure. On the other side of it with Chicago, like I mentioned a little bit in our previous segment, kind of hinted at it, this Bengals defense stinks out loud, no question. They can't do anything other than DJ Turner kind of having a nice year in the secondary. But other than that, they can't really do anything right. And they specifically struggle in the way that a Ben Johnson offense should be able to just give it to them. And I mean, look at last week. Breece Hall, best game of the season, pretty much. Just power run game, get after it. They can't stop the run, and then they are able to build off play action. And that's never really been Justin Fields' thing. He was 7 of 10 for 109 yards on play action attempts last week. 5th most yards on play action among all quarterbacks last week was Justin Fields against this Bengals defense. They struggle in zone coverage. They struggle over the middle of the field. The linebackers, the Bengals and the Cowboys should have a competition as to who, talk about Halloween. Who's got the scariest linebacker film in the NFL right now between the Bengals and the Cowboys linebackers? It's a horror show between those two teams. So that's what this Bears offense should be able to do. Rome Odunze, shots over the middle, rip it down the throat of this unit right here. But can Caleb Williams do that? Right? That's been the kind of the ongoing existential nonsense with this team. It's funny, Boone, because I was writing about this today. The Bears, they're a perfectly average offense, but not in any individual metric. It's like you got to parse different metrics out, because right now they're 26th in success rate, which again is like a down and distance metric, but they're 3rd in explosive play rate. So it's like the down to down consistency is not there, but there is good here. Like, they are making some big plays on this offense. So how does that average out against one of the worst defenses in the league? That's the question this week.
It has to happen this week for them. It has to happen this week for Caleb Williams. If it doesn't, then shut her down for the rest of the season in terms of Caleb Williams as a fantasy option. Like, if he can't get there versus the Bengals, and I say that because we talked about it on Monday, he struggled in 2 easy matchups the last couple of weeks here. So you can't feel totally confident that he's going to go out and just blow up in this game. But if he can't get it done here, the schedule gets much, much tougher as the year goes along. So I have some concerns about this passing attack if they can't go out and take advantage of the most obvious spot here. And yet, that the way the NFL season goes, sometimes even in the most obvious spots, guys don't come through. And we talked about at the top of the show, right? Bijan Robinson going against the Dolphins last week. you would have thought was the smash spot of all smash spots, and yet he doesn't have a great game there. So yeah, fingers crossed that Caleb Williams can get it done here, because if he can't, I'm not really sure on the schedule where we'll feel confident putting him in our lineups.
Next game up here, Cardinals at Cowboys. Again, to talk about my problems here, the one league that you and I are in together, our little office league, it's truly my only bad fantasy team this year, and it's mostly, to give myself a break here, it's mostly because of injuries. Amari Hampton out, Joe Burrow's been out forever, so I've been streaming quarterbacks. I've been streaming Joe Flacco, but now Flacco's on the injury report. I'm like, well, God, I guess I'll pick up Kyler Murray against the damn Cowboys defense. Is he even going to play in this game? Jacoby Brissett, Kyler Murray splitting reps in this one. So, Boone, what is going to happen in this game? We know what the Cowboys are going to do. They're going to put up points. But can the Cardinals do anything on the other side? We kind of talked about this earlier. Can they do anything on the other side to make this interesting? I have my doubts.
I think they can, but again, I think that's just because of the matchup. I don't necessarily think that's because they have a great offense. I just think the Cowboys are going to make it easy enough on them, and the point total for this game is very high. So I think we are going to see some fireworks in this one. But it's pretty funny and maybe sad that you see Jacoby Brissett out there at practice and you go, hey, Jacoby Brissett's out there. That's really good for my Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. shares. And it's like, oh man, you feel bad for Kyler Murray that's where it's at right now. But like I said earlier, Kyler Murray's not been a good fantasy quarterback. Jacoby Brissett goes out there. He's throwing touchdowns. He's throwing for 300 yards. There is potential in this offense, and it really seems like Brissett kind of unlocks it a little bit better. But regardless of who's under center this week, the matchup's so easy that, I think they are going to be fine in this one.
Yeah, I feel like if the Cardinals if Kyler Murray's healthy and they don't play him in this one, it's like a punishment. Like, they want Jacoby Brissett to go out there and Drew Petzing to be like, see, my offense is good. Just throw the passes. They're there. See, Jacoby Brissett can do it. Come on. So that's how I would feel if Kyler Murray, if he's healthy, which maybe he is, maybe he's not. I don't know. But that's
soft benching,
that's the big
which
question
has been the popular term this year. Is it a soft benching?
I'm so over soft bench. I want to hard bench the term soft benching. How about that? That's what I'd like right at this point. Like, give me a break. Some of these quarterback situations have been undoubtedly weird, but not everybody who misses a game because of injuries is soft bench. Please, enough already. Last game I want to talk about here, Niners at Giants. I'm almost pissed that I'm including the Niners here because I'm so over the B team with the Niners. I just want to see all the guys out there. Even Kittle after the game was like, yeah, I'm excited to play with Ricky Pearsall. I'm excited to play with Brandon Ayuk. And I'm like, yes, George, me too. I'm also excited for you to play with those guys. And Brock Purdy, come on. Let's get these guys back there. But it looks like we're going to get another game of Mac Jones, Jawan Jennings dragging all of his body parts behind him, trying to put together some good film to go get a contract. George Kittle, CMC. What happens against this Giants defense, which, Boone, I think is just a disappointing unit on the course of the season?
Yeah, I mean, they've been the 49ers have been productive more often than not, regardless of who the quarterback is. So, yeah, I still think there is going to be value there. I think they're going to have a good game. I think it's interesting. One of the spots with the Niners that kind of caught me up this week is I was trying in my waiver wire column to come up with streamer defenses who are available in 50% of leagues or more. And there just aren't that many this week because bye weeks, because injuries, all that sort of stuff. We're like the 49ers are like the third best streaming option at defense this week. And their defense is decimated. It's not
bad.
good. Yeah. The Giants give up a lot of points. So you hope that maybe the 49ers defense will be able to come through because the Giants are a top 10 matchup for fantasy defenses. But yeah, it's pretty sad that that's where we've gotten to with the 49ers defense because of all the injuries that they have. And that there aren't better options this week for streaming defenses. So it's not for, lack of trying, folks. I was out there trying to dig some up, but there are just not that many great options that you might actually have to consider the 49ers in this one.
And I think Dart on the other side of it, though, can have success against this Niners defense, even with his depleted supporting cast, because this is a really bad defense with a lot of injuries, especially where Dart probably wants to throw the football. I think Tyron Tracy can be a fantasy starter for people who picked him up the waiver wire right away in this game. And lastly, from the Mac Jones side of it, on the other side, I mentioned that just like games where he's going to get a lot of pressure, not going to be good for Mac Jones. And we knew that was coming last week with Houston, which is fifth in pressure rate. The Giants, despite all those names on the defensive line, are 20th in pressure rate this year. So this is not like a smash spot for Mac Jones by any mean, but it is definitely a spot where he can get this offense going. So yeah, I think this could be like not a high scoring game because neither of these offenses have all their guys out there, but it could be a game where the right guys get home from a fantasy standpoint. That's kind of how I'm viewing this one. But we are going to go to our last break. When we come back, it's time for the hurry up offense for week 9. We'll get into that right after this. All right, it's time. The hurry up offense where Boone and I go rapid fire through the rest of the show, forcing the other to answer questions or respond to a bold prediction for this week in 40 seconds or less. Welcome to the hurry up offense. All right, Boone, as always, you get to go first.
All right, so I will give you a compliment off the start here. You wrote an excellent article on the 2025 wide receiver class earlier this week. And no, I'm not buttering you up, don't worry. But I do want to know which rookie wide receiver, after writing that article, which rookie wide receiver did you go stash before you published that article? Was there someone that you wrote about in that article where you were like, you know what? I do really like that stat about this guy, but I'm going to go get him before I put this article out and everyone else goes and gets him?
I would never think of doing that. How could you even say that? The problem is, I had generally had, I'd had like Jack Bech stashed in deeper leagues. He was one I thought about. Noel I had already had stashed. Pat Bryant was probably the one.
Should I throw the flag? We'll throw the flag so you have more time here. How about that? We haven't thrown the flag.
My answer was just going to be Pat Bryant was the one that I actually added this week, like kind of on the low, and I had been stashing a little bit. So I'm glad you brought him up earlier, honestly, so that I don't just have to take credit for that one. But yeah, Pat Bryant would be the answer. All right, I'll get you a question here, Boone. Are you starting any member of the Tennessee Titans against the Chargers? Don't think we couldn't get a non-Titans mention here on the show.
No, despite a couple weeks ago when I had to start Van Jefferson in an extremely deep dynasty league. No, I am not starting anyone from that team. I still have Tajay Spears stashed in a couple places. Chimere DK I have on a couple deeper dynasty teams. But no, I wouldn't be starting anybody in that offense. Though I will say, Gunnar Helm, keep an eye on Gunnar Helm the second half of the season. Would not be shocked if he overtook Chigakonkwo as the potential starting tight end in that offense. And I believe I saw before we started recording today that Chigakonkwo is not practicing today. So perhaps that could open the door for Gunnar Helm. That would be interesting. I think he's a talented player and he's already done some stuff with the opportunities that he's gotten. we've talked about wide receivers who could realistically be traded before the deadline, like actual options. But if you went like full fantasy mode, so you could just take any receiver on any team and you could place them on any other team in a trade, who is that player and what team would you send them to?
So this is not somebody that is rumored to be traded. This could just be anybody.
Anybody.
Or do you want?
This is like dream scenario, like just whatever you want to do.
I actually think I would take AJ Brown and put him on your Bills. I would for two reasons here. One, I kind of think that, and I talked about this on Reception Perception this week, that I think the Eagles have reached the Bills' Stephon Diggs point where it's like, you guys need to just get divorced and it'll be better for it. And you clearly want to break up, so just break up. Everybody will be happier. The Bills need a real X receiver. A.J. Brown could be that. And then Devontae Smith, who I think is balling right now, he could really take off rest of season. So it helps everybody, and it's already kind of maybe in the air. All right. I'll give you one here. Give me the State of the Union on your guy, J.J. McCarthy.
I mean, the State of the Union on J.J. McCarthy at this point is a fairly sad one, but we talked about it a bit in a previous show that his matchups earlier in the season were tough. This guy's only played 2 games. Like, people are out on him after 2 games. In the first game, he did have that miraculous finish, so he showed some signs of life there. Then he went out against the Falcons defense that has shut down some better quarterbacks since. They had a good game against the Bills. And then he had the injury. I don't think that the coaching staff has a lot of faith in him right now. I don't think that he's where he needs to be in their eyes. But he's still so young and he has the weapons around him. Let's get this offensive line healthy. Let's get him a real shot. He's not a fantasy asset at the moment in redraft, but I still think that we're going to hear the best from him in the second half of the season. With the NFL trade deadline approaching, what is the last fantasy trade that you made and how has it worked out so far?
Okay, so James Coe and I, in our Reception Perception Sicko Dynasty League, we made a trade. I gave him Sam Darnold because I have Caleb Williams and Danny Dimes. I have the total reclamation QB room, even though I never get those guys right. I was like, all right, well, I don't really need Sam Darnold. And he gave me, in Superflex League, he gave me Chase Brown and Woody Marks because I am hurting for running back so absurdly hard. And it's only 1 week, but I absolutely smashed last week. And I think I got a chance to go from, I thought that team might be cooked, to now we might go somewhere. So I think it's worked out.
So were you panicking
Is it good?
when
What
I
do you
mentioned
think?
the Woody Marks injury situation? Were you panicking about that?
You know, I also actually have Nick Chubb on that roster, which is why it's why I'm cooked at running back. So it could work out for me either way in a strange sense. All right, last one here for this segment. Justin Boone, would you rather be put in a time machine and be taken back to the era of dinosaurs? Let's call it mid-Cretaceous period, as that's generally said to be the most dangerous period due to the presence of many apex land predators, and have to live as a wilderness man in this scenario, or finish dead last in the rankings contest.
Harmon, I'm a little bit disappointed in you because we talked about Jurassic Park at one point. I told you that my wife got me one of the original versions of that book that I have on my bookshelf that I'm looking at right now. On the show before, I have worn a Jurassic Park shirt. Man, of course I would go back and I would hang out with the dinosaurs and I would find a way to survive. There is no way that I would rather lose at the Fantasy Pros accuracy contest. There is no chance. I think it would be an incredible experience to go back and live with the dinosaurs and have like that real challenge to see if I could do it and if I could live in that time. So yeah, I'm going back with the dinosaurs all the way.
Dude, you need professional help. This is how competitive you are, is that you can't lose the rankings contest, but you somehow think you're competitive enough that you're going to win in an era of dinosaurs. Like, no, you're going to be, you see that guy look at the screen right here. That one of those 2 animals is taking your ass down, bro.
I mean, it helps that the crew's making me look awesome in all of these graphics. Like, I mean, it looks great. It looks like I got a shot there, I think.
I was gonna say, in this graphic here, you know what? If I was you, I would take the time machine just so I could go back and look like that. Okay, even if I'm gonna get eaten by that dinosaur in 3 seconds, like this guy. Look at the veins on this guy. You look incredible. You've never looked better.
Absolutely.
All right, that is going to do it for today's show. We appreciate the hell out of you, for everybody that watches, that works so hard on the show, and Justin Boone, of course, doing it every single week. If you have a specific fantasy question, every Friday on this channel, John Daigle goes live for a Q&A at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Friday. He's here for you. Make sure you tune into that, subscribe to the channel, all those things. Meanwhile, we will be back on Sunday for our recap show with Chris Allen. It's going to go live as usual when the late game windows close. So when Chiefs Bills hits 000, and hopefully Justin Boone's excited. He's celebrating once again. It's Jays win the World Series. It's Bills beat the Chiefs. You're going to join us right here on YouTube to recap all of that. Until then, we are out.